Hello, I'm Donna Moore, the CEO and Chairwoman of the LoRa Alliance. And I'm here today to talk to you about delivering a superior deployment experience and connectivity experience with LoRaWAN, really both inside and outside buildings and facilities. And probably just as importantly, to share with everyone, how do you drive your mass IoT business with LoRaWAN? So I'm going to start at first just covering who LoRa Alliance is and what is LoRaWAN. So the LoRa Alliance is a nonprofit open alliance. It was launched in 2015, and there's really three key components of the LoRa Alliance. We develop and maintain the LoRaWAN specification. We promote the LoRaWAN specification, and we have a very strong certification program. And when devices get through the certification program, they are then LoRaWAN certified with the mark. And I know probably everybody on this call knows the importance of certification. It really is specifically for LoRaWAN deployments in that because of our strength, many of the devices, the sensor-based devices, are placed in very hard-to-reach areas in underground, between buildings. And so it's really important to know that the devices are going to work as expected. And the battery life for LoRaWAN, which I'll get into a little bit later, is really 10 plus years. So you really want to deploy and let the devices be there. And it's important to know that they're going to work and work as expected. And that's why the certification mark is really key for LoRa Alliance deployments, LoRaWAN deployments. So LoRaWAN, like I said, is an open global standard, and really for LPWAN scaling, low power wide area network scaling, LoRaWAN is really the only LPWAN that's scaling at mass scale today. And there's a couple reasons. One, we are an open standard, which allows for innovation and new devices and new use cases. And two, we are a standard, so interoperability and again, certification as we roll forward and continue to scale. There are proprietary solutions in the market, and I'm sure that everybody on this call knows and agrees that for scalability and adding to your network, proprietary solutions are not going to scale, and especially in the IoT space where the number of use cases is really just unlimited. And LoRaWAN, some of the key points, there are many more, but we offer end-to-end scaling. I'll talk about that in my presentation about why it's so important for collaboration within the LoRa Alliance to scale, and it's allowed us to scale at the massive rates that we have really in every vertical around the globe. We also have specifications that make it easy to develop, deploy, and certify, as specifications for easy onboarding, QR codes, RFID compatible, and working with RFID for easy deployment. So those are some really key points. The other one that I'll talk about in this presentation is the multi-RAN strategies. And we strongly believe that the LPWAN, the mass IoT market, is so big, you really need to have a multi-RAN approach to addressing the needs of the market, because not one standard or one type of deployment will meet all the varied needs in the market. We have some great use cases where we work with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and many others, RFID, to move forward. And also, in terms of LPWAN deployments, LoRaWAN with our vast ecosystem and the greatest number of devices for the greatest number of use cases in mass IoT have the most devices on the market. So we're very proud of that. And again, it's really helped us to scale for mass IoT. So let's move forward here. So it's really the LoRa Alliance members that are driving LoRaWAN to the success that we've had and the great achievements, particularly over the last few years. And it is the ecosystem that allows vendor of choice. They all interoperate, but you can pick vendor of choice. It helps reduce costs. And it's this massive ecosystem, again, that's driving the adoption globally. And you can tell with the number of members that we have and the leaders that we have why we've been so successful and why LoRaWAN moving forward will continue to scale and add on to the different types of deployments because of our vast ecosystem. So the LoRaWAN, this is what I think I'm probably one of the things I'm very proud of is that it really requires member collaboration to simplify deployments. I always say that mass IoT is like, it's like a village to implement. It requires a lot of expertise from a lot of different types of companies. And through the LoRa Alliance, our members collaborate to simplify the deployments. And then we, as you can see on the screen, we have everything from chipsets to modules, devices, gateways, servers, operators, cloud platforms, solution providers, system integrators. It really does take, excuse me, a village. Let me grab some water here. To move this forward. And, you know, I would recommend going on Google Alerts and putting in LoRa Alliance or LoRaWAN, and daily you will see the number of collaborations and new deployments around the world, and massive deployments in the millions, you know, not all, but many. And why this member ecosystem is so important and has really driven forward, again, particularly in the last few years, through the member collaboration. So again, I encourage you to get on Google Alerts and really see daily the number of collaborations and deployments. It'll give you a feel for the breadth and depth of the types of deployments with LoRaWAN. So the benefits of using LoRaWAN for the home and buildings, excuse me, it's early in the Pacific time zone. So there are many, and specifically for the home and building. And I'm going to walk through them, how they relate to building structures. Again, it's really not just home and buildings. It's any kind of building infrastructure, whether it's campuses or apartment buildings, or whether it's office buildings or homes. So it's really a breadth of deployments that LoRaWAN is doing. So let me walk through them specifically for building infrastructures. One of the key things with LoRaWAN is that we have both public and private networks, and many of the members are moving to a hybrid model. So depending if the assets are on the move or not, depending if the client wants, you know, if it's a building and they want a private deployment, or if it's a public deployment that you can put the network up and share between multiple customers. You know, if you compare that obviously to cellular and NB-IoT and some of the others, they don't have the private hybrid option. So low cost, the other thing that's flexible with LoRaWAN for your customers as you deploy this is really that there's both CapEx and OpEx models available. So it depends on the needs of your customer, if they're wanting to purchase and you know, keep it on the books, or do a monthly subscription. Again, very flexible within our ecosystem. We also have future proofing. We do over-the-air updates for the massive sensors, and we also have safety controls. So if you're we have 3 classes, I won't go into the technical details, but if you're in a mode where you can receive information and then give back information to the sensor and tell it to turn off water valves if there is a leak once you are notified, or tell it to do something that you need that we can do over the air, which is super important. And the way that LoRaWAN is structured in our MAC layer, it really preserves the battery life because we switch in and out of these modes. We have bidirectional security. LoRaWAN was developed with the best security experts in mind, security experts from around the globe. And it was built that way. We continue to evolve our security, as we always know it's a moving target. And so we're very proud of the security standards and the bidirectionalness of the security, end-to-end security. As I talked about, we have a 10-year battery life, and really it's the MAC layer of the LoRaWAN that allows this extensive battery life. It's really 10 plus years. And if you are deploying, like I said, in areas that are hard to reach, or you're deploying in the millions or billions, you really can't be going out every year or two and changing all those batteries. So battery life is key depending on the needs of the type of requirement. Another one, especially for home and buildings, is the multi-floor and coverage penetration with LoRaWAN. So LoRaWAN is exceedingly well at penetrating through concrete, through metal, through steel doors, through multi-levels of structures, The coverage and the extension and the length of the extension is significant. So again, depending on the needs of deployment and where you're deploying, really LoRaWAN is the perfect solution for those needs. I will also say LoRaWAN also has satellites that we're working at. So in areas where there is not satellite connectivity, excuse me, Wi-Fi connectivity, or even in rural areas where farming areas, LoRaWAN uses a satellite to cover those areas as well. So the extensiveness of our coverage as well as the penetration and is phenomenal, specific to LoRaWAN. So as I showed you before, we have a very strong ecosystem, and that ecosystem is growing every day, and it really provides new solutions and vendor of choice for the different use cases and for bids as you move forward to deploy LoRaWAN. And, LoRaWAN is so easy to deploy in scale and to add to existing use cases. I'll talk about that in a minute. But probably one of the greatest things for a return on benefit on the networks is being able to take the networks and continue to scale out and add use cases. And that's been one of the greatest benefits for LoRaWAN ecosystem as well. So let me move on. All right, so LoRaWAN connectivity applications for buildings and homes. And again, you just really need to think broader than just buildings and home. It's really any infrastructure at all. And soon I'll talk about beyond infrastructure. But I mean, there are many of the similar use cases that you would imagine. Like if you look on the side of the screen, there's ventilation and humidity in office buildings. There's desk occupancy and temperature monitoring and energy and locks. So, and some of those use cases are covered with other technologies, but LoRaWAN takes those use cases and then in addition to, or works with Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, other technologies, and brings it to the outside with parking spots. For the home, garage is a big one, making sure that the garage is, shut at night. It's lightings, it's sprinklers. We have many use cases with propane, so that the propane companies just come out when they get alert. It saves time and money. They know before the propane gets low to come out, so that that the homes and or businesses are always with that. Pet trackers, anything outside the home that requires great distance. And there is LoRaWAN with seniors and tracking seniors, particularly around the Alzheimer's residents. There's irrigation solutions. And an interesting thing that I'll talk a little bit about later, but termite and pest control is a huge one for LoRaWAN, particularly in restaurants where they need to monitor maybe mouse traps and know that once the mouse goes off, then the support companies come out. It saves time, money, and I'll talk a little bit later about how that also impacts insurances. So as I said before, LoRaWAN offers complementary solutions. We very much welcome the multi-RAN strategy. I'll show in a minute some examples of Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, Zigbee, Z-Wave. Again, we work with all of them. I would also say, and it's very important to understand, that one gateway for LoRaWAN can take up to thousands of devices, so it's very cost effective. And again, because of our flexibility in deployment models and our flexibility in payment models, LoRaWAN really has been the choice for these types of deployments. So just a little bit more about where LoRaWAN fills the gap from a technology perspective. Everyone's familiar with Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, and for short range, high bandwidth video voice, again, we work with Bluetooth and Wi-Fi frequently. In fact, we have some use cases in buildings where Bluetooth is used for distance monitoring with COVID, and then singles LoRaWAN to do the tracking. Cellular, as you're familiar with, again, voice, video, critical IoT, high power, high bandwidth for cellular. LoRaWAN fits a different niche market, and that really is sensors that need to last many, many years for mass IoT, the lowest power possible. Again, the goal is that they will be there for, multiple years. The long range of LoRaWAN and the flexible coverage. So again, we strongly believe that depending on the needs of the customer, you may use 1, 2, 3, all 3 of these. The thing that LoRaWAN doesn't do, and why the complement is there with cellular and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth, is we do not do high bandwidth. We do not do voice, and we do not do video. Our strength is really in the low power, long distance batteries that need to communicate important information over a long period of time, but small data bytes, and then be able to communicate back to those devices if needed, depending on the deployment, to do something, shut off, turn on, predictive maintenance, and I'll go over some of those in just a bit here. So there is a huge need for LoRaWAN, and the market, while we have millions and millions of deployments around the globe in all verticals, the reality is it's still just beginning, because everything your eye sees can have a LoRaWAN sensor and can tell us something to do something better. And it's not just about the data. Yes, we capture the data and we need all of the ecosystem pieces to put this together, but it's obviously about what the data tells us and how easy it is to use the data or put that data on automation to take care of many things for us. All right, so let me see my time. Oh, I am running low here. So LoRaWAN addresses emerging smart building needs. And what I want to say here is, historically, it's really been about sustainability and green buildings, which is the middle block here. But buildings are moving more from a green building, which is really just around sustainability, to blue buildings, which are around, the language is people, planet, and profit. And the people is the employee safety, and the buildings are moving more to tracking CO2 gases and toxic gases and water and social distancing. Again, these are blue buildings. The same sustainability is the planet, which is what we've been detecting, which is water leakage, energy usage, waste management. And then what's moving forward as well as the people, the employee safety, and the maintenance, which is the profit for the buildings, is really around preventative or predictive maintenance, insurance for claims and prevention of claims. They're getting a reduction on insurance for, again, monitoring water leakage or damage from rodents and pests, like I had talked about before. Also around predictive cleaning and humidity and temperature. So people, planet, and profitability is the blue building moving forward, and we know that the market is going to grow to over 160 billion by 2026, because this is really key. And it's a balancing act, and LoRaWAN gives you the data, usable data, to be able to balance these 3. Because let me give you an example. On the employee safety with CO2, if the room is not well ventilated, employees will get sleepy, just like you feel when you travel on an airplane, and won't be as productive. But if you have max ventilation to improve productivity, that impacts the sustainability of the building and reduces sustainability and reduces the profit because of the cost of that. So with all of these, it's a balancing act, and that's where LoRaWAN can come in and really look at all 3 of these points and balance it out so that employees are productive and they have good air quality and good water and emergency buttons, but then balancing out with sustainability and profitability. It's really important to look at all of those, and that's the blue buildings that they're looking at moving forward. All right, I am going to have to speed up here. I will do it this way. I just want to say that with LoRaWAN, it's not just about building infrastructure. It's also that we're very strong in energy and utilities. Water metering is one, but gas and electricity is also another. You can also expand your networks into cities. We're very strong in smart cities, where it's smart lighting and parking and trash bins and traffic lights. And the great thing about LoRaWAN is you put up an infrastructure. Again, remember, when gateway covers thousands of devices, and depending on the line of sight, depends on how much you need to densify devices or not. But once you have a network up, easy, cost-effective to put up, you can just keep adding use cases. And because of our vast ecosystem, there are so many use cases to add that the ROI continues to drive, because you're utilizing the network for more and more and more important resources. So I see my time is up. I'm going to just do this really quick. And this is an example with Boingo and Wi-Fi, and it's an opportunity about multifamily dwellings. I'm going to give you some resources, and you can go into this later, but it's really about using Wi-Fi in the buildings and LoRaWAN extending beyond the buildings and how they work together. The next one is indoor air quality, and this is with MicroShare, one of our members, and they measured the indoor air quality and the importance of that for people, whether they're in their home or in buildings or in subway stations. So you can look at this opportunity and what LoRaWAN and MicroShare is doing here. The next one, so important to me, but the LoRaWAN solutions for, and this is with Kerlink and Swiss Cloud, two of the LoRa Alliance members, and this is looking at monitoring pharmaceutical products and storing them and temperature monitoring. And this is such a huge opportunity for hospitals and clinics. Right now, they literally have people going around, and it's true with many areas, taking monitors manually. They have to make sure that the temperature is the right temperature so that the medications don't spoil without knowing it, and or the refrigeration system doesn't go off at all. COVID is one that must be kept at a very cool temperature. And the great things about LoRaWAN, particularly for hospitals and medical clinics, is that it doesn't interfere with the current IT infrastructure, which is quite frankly usually antiquated and very specific and requires a lot of different types of security. So they've done a great job reducing labor and improving the information, because as soon as storage for the pharmaceuticals go down, immediately they can fix it without losing that medication. And the labor time they save is through the roof. So, okay, great. I'm just a couple minutes over. So what I would say is two things. Do put in for Google Alerts, if you're interested to see every day the new developments that are happening and the new deployments that are happening, put LoRaWAN, LoRa Alliance, and you'll get Google Alerts on it. It's quite overwhelming, really. And the other thing is, if you go to our website here, you'll find more use cases and case studies and videos about certainly LoRaWAN in buildings, but additional use cases as well. And the other thing I would say that's really important is to follow LoRaWAN on LinkedIn and Twitter, because you will see the latest, hottest news off the press about what's happening in the mass LPWAN IoT market, specifically, obviously, with LoRaWAN. And last, I will leave you that LoRa Alliance and the TIA have put together a sustainable smart buildings for the planet, people, and profit, the blue building I was talking about, white paper. And I want to thank MicroShare, Talkpool, Tectelic, and the TIA members, IQR, Microsoft, Scopac, and Superior Essex, and UL for contributing, and you can find it at that link. So with that, I think I will turn it back over and open it up for the Q&A. Thank you.